But the rest day is never over until the last drug results are in, and last night news broke that Frank Schleck had tested positive, not for anything directly performance enhancing, but for a diuretic called zipamide. Now, zipamide is what's known as a specified substance rather than a banned one, meaning that there can be legitimate uses for it, but generally only if a rider has a medical exemption. That, we understand, is not what Frank Schleck is claiming. Nonetheless, he is out of the race. For details of exactly what he is claiming and what his team Radio Shack Nissan Trek are saying, here's Ned.
Well, there was no sign, of course, of Frank Schleck at the Radio Shack Nissan Team Hotel this morning. He had been spirited away from the Tour de France in the middle of the night. This is a picture of him leaving Pau police station, where he'd spent a good portion of yesterday evening. He'd gone there voluntarily and given a statement to the anti-doping branch of the police. Later on in the evening, he released his own statement in which he insisted on his innocence, insisted also on his right to have these B sample tested, and claimed that should that come back positive, then his defence will be based on contamination or, in his own words, poisoning. And at that stage, according to Schleck, the matter could be back with the police, he claims, as part of a possible criminal investigation. At this point in our filming, our presence was no longer desired, so we headed to the start. There, the traditional maelstrom had blown in. Radio Shack, who already have one name on their bus drawn into the crossfire of doping accusations, now suddenly with another blaze to put out.
The UCI, they told us, let's say around 6 or 7 yesterday evening, that Frank was positive. At the same time, UCI came to Frank to tell him, because he has to sign papers and so on. And then Frank, together with Alain Galopin, they decided not to start anymore. First of all, it made no sense. He would have every day the circus you see now, and it's also kind of respect towards the Tour de France.
A somewhat more raw response then came from Jens Voigt, caught in a difficult no man's land between friendship and frustration.
It's hard. I mean, after all, since many years, I said that he's a good friend of me. So I think, friendship always goes not only in the sunshine, but also goes when it rains. And so, yeah, I still believe in him.
You believe in him. Do you understand if large sections of the cycling public just shrug their shoulders and say, yet again?
Yes, I can see that happen. And yes, I understand that. I mean, it's the same for me. Like, all I wish for the last 5 years probably is just have one quiet and peaceful Tour de France, where we just concentrate on the sport, that we're going to provide a spectacular battle in the mountains, in the time trials, that we have a great winner, great yellow jersey, a great green jersey, a great mountain jersey. And yes, every year it seems like we have another happening of the unpleasant kind. So yes, it is pretty hard, yes.
Thanks, Jens, I appreciate it. The B sample result will be released within 4 days, but due process may be very protracted indeed. In that respect, doping investigations have some previous.
Yes, as Ned says, tests on the B sample have to be carried out within 4 days, so on that timeline we might have a cheery update for you on Saturday evening. In the meantime, on with stage 16, the first of 2 massive days in the Pyrenees. Now, in a tour of new and unfamiliar climbs, stage 16 is about history and tradition. The history and tradition of suffering. 4 famous and famously difficult mountains on the menu, starting with the super category Col d'Aubisque, topping out at just over 1,700 metres. There is some respite after that. It's nearly 50 kilometres from the summit of the Aubisque to the start of the next climb, but then it's relentless. The Col du Tourmalet is the highest, if not the longest climb on this year's tour, 2,115 metres in altitude. And once they're down that, it's straight over the Col d'Aspin at just under 1,500 metres and the Col de Peyresourde at 1,579. 4 massive mountains then, but no mountain finish. Instead, a 16-kilometre run down into Bagneres-de-Luchon. Now, we're still not sure what was up with Bradley Wiggins' bike the other day. Whatever it was, the mechanics have had a full day to work on it, so it had better not let him down today. He was at the head of a peloton numbering 153 in Pau this morning after the departure of Frank Schleck. 198 men started in Liège, remember. No sign of any problems for Bradley early on, but in a bit of role reversal, Chris Horner's bike threw him in a ditch. Here's the bike, and here's Horner emerging from the bushes to get back on it. That was on the climb of the Col d'Aubisque, and on the descent, something more serious. Katyusha's Vladimir Gusov collided with Roman Zangl of Cofidis, and that is the classic post-crash stance that indicates a broken collarbone. So 152 in the field, and of that 152, somehow 38 of them managed to get in the breakaway, so a quarter of the field was up the road. At the head of it, as it approached the summit of the Aubisque, were Frederick Kessiakoff, the leader in the King of the Mountains competition, and Thomas Voeckler, who started the day in fourth. Voeckler, with the help of a little lead out from his Europcar teammate, Yukiya Arashiro, took the 25 points at the top. Kessiakoff got 20 for second. That pulled Voeckler up to second place overall, 27 points behind Kessiakoff, with a maximum 45 left on the stage. On the climb of the Tourmalet, a small group formed, and in it, along with those two, were Dan Martin of Garmin and Brice Fayou of Source-sur-Gessun. As the gradient took its toll, first Kessiakoff slipped off the group, and then Dan Martin did the same. So 2 Frenchmen heading for the highest point of this year's race, and the €5,000 that come with the Jacques Godet prize. Fayou wasn't going to deprive the man targeting the polka dot jersey, so Voeckler took another 25 points. Behind them, Dan Martin was third and Kessiakoff fourth. That brought Voeckler to within 15 points of the lead, with a maximum of 10 points each available on the last 2 climbs of the day. As we pick up commentary, a yellow jersey group of only around 35 riders is on the climb of the Tourmalet, 10 minutes behind the breakaway.
So we're looking down now at the yellow jersey coming up towards the summit. Another mountain to be ticked off by Bradley Wiggins, and the guys around him have not raised a pedal in anger. He's still surrounded by 5 of his teammates. He's come over the 2 high climbs of the day with 2 lower ones, although equally difficult, I think, 2 first category climbs, and he's never been challenged.
No, I have a feeling they're going to wait till the very, very end, the final climb of the day, because if they can get a minute or so on the climb of the Col de Peyresourde, Vincenzo Nibali or Cadel Evans will be able to keep the majority of that on the descent into Bagneres-de-Luchon. But they do certainly need to take the race at some time and try and put Team Sky into difficulty.
Well, there's the peloton and what's left of it as the gap comes up. 10 minutes 1 is still counting to the summit for the peloton, led by Christian Knies and Edvard Boysenhagen. It's the crossing of the Col de Tourmalet, and Bradley Wiggins marches on towards Luchon.
Thomas Voeckler wasn't so much marching as pulling himself along by the power of facial expression alone. And on the climb of the Col d'Aspin, he took another 10 points to pull himself within 6 of the outright lead in the King of the Mountains competition. Behind, Liquigas had replaced Sky at the head of the yellow jersey group for the first time in the race.
Basso, Nibali starting to toughen it up now. We're looking at 27 miles, 42 kilometers to go to the finish. A little slap on the back for Ivan Basso. What do you think it feels like, Phil, for Vincenzo Nibali to have Ivan Basso as your top Gregario helper?
Absolutely fantastic, but he's still going to do it himself in the end. Andreas Klöden is also being dropped off the back now. These riders are falling thick
Cadel
and
Evans
fast.
is going backwards.
What is this?
This is Cadel Evans. He's
under pressure, far side.
There. Well, that's a shocker.
Well, the pressure's gone on. It's been applied by Ivan Basso of Liquigas Cannondale, and Cadel Evans, who's sitting on the back wheel here of his teammate Moignard, the rider who helped him out when he had his flat tyre on top of the col the other day. That's a definite split.
And these riders coming back now as the yellow jersey group is at a kilometre to the summit of the climb are riders who in that early group that got away of 38 riders. But Ivan Basso is leading the peloton with what the French call un train d'enfer, a pace from hell this afternoon. And their first casualty is #1, the defending champion, Cadel Evans. And Armel Moinard keeps looking over his shoulder to see where is Cadel Evans here this afternoon. And Cadel cannot even follow the wheel of the riders in front of him. And he's at 1 kilometre to go, so he could recover on the descent. And he's trying to recover now as he gets out of the saddle, accelerates again, trying to stay in contact with this group. He's trying to defend his position high up in the overall standings.
But up front now is the pacemaking of Ivan Basso that's caused all the crisis in the back of the peloton. And Wiggins has moved right up to look after himself now with his rival Nibali just in front of him.
Well, I think more than anything else, Phil, he just wants to ride on Nibali's wheel. He's got his teammates. He's still got 3 teammates in the group. He's got Richie Porte, Michael Rogers and Chris Froome, but he wants to keep an eye on Nibali. He's waiting for the move to come from Nibali. I don't expect it to come here. As I've always said, the move will come on the Col de Peyresourde. That is where the Italian will attack.
Yes, it's also interesting to note, Paul, that TJ Van Garderen, who was accused the other day of not waiting for Cadel when he had those flat tyres, is still in the lead group. And, you know, if Cadel is feeling bad, I think Evans will have said, you stay here.
I think that's probably right, Phil. He starts the day in 7th place in the overall standing, the best young rider in the Tour de France this year. And I think he was probably given the nod by his leader to stay in contact with the group, because who knows how my body's going to react this afternoon.
Well, this is the Col d'Aspin, reportedly a much easier climb than the two we've just had, but those two have weakened the body, certainly of Cadel Evans at the moment. The camera's just catching up here with Gorka Izagirre. There's the top of the Col d'Aspin now as the riders continue to come up. And remember, Voigtler's gone over the top and Failure. And this is Kirienka is down there. Look at the time gaps now, 9 minutes 10 seconds as Basso brings up the yellow jersey, and more importantly for him, his teammate Vincenzo Nibali. We're just wondering whether Nibali will try an audacious attack. He's asking for newspapers here to try and put up his jumper for the cold descent, but I wonder if he'll push home. It's a real tricky attack. This is Cadel Evans as he comes up the climb now. A very definite time gap. He is a good descender, and he's going to have to prove it on this descent, because there's still the Col de Peyresourde to come.
Well, that's the big problem, Phil. He will take big risks on the descent, try to get himself back into the leading group with all of the other contenders, and then as soon as he makes the junction at the bottom of the climb, assuming that he does, he starts the final climb of the day, the Col de Peyresourde, which is a difficult climb.
He's looking as though he's struggling, but he's starting to keep himself composed. He's 10 minutes one down and 40 seconds behind the Wiggins group. Cadel Evans is in trouble on the penultimate climb in the Pyrenees.
And now Ivan Basso, they really are trying to put the stranglehold on this race this afternoon. But look, in second position, Sky, Richie Porte. Fourth position, Sky, that's Chris Froome. Bradley Wiggins just sitting there. His face, Phil, is not showing any emotion at all.
Neither is Nibali, just behind him, but Nibali is not gaining a second here. Chris Froome is pacing his teammate and leader, Bradley Wiggins. The challenges of the day are almost over for the yellow jersey. A day that he'll tick off with pride, because they're not going to get the time on him now, even though Basso is making superb efforts. This rider's getting ready for the long descent to the finishing line, because Thomas Voigtler is heading up to the top of the Col de Peyresourde, and then he'll take the lead in the King of the Mountains. All that remains will be to win the stage as well. What a day. And there's the attack, and it's come from Vincenzo Nibali as they approach the summit of the Col de Peyresourde.
There's no panic, though. Look at Team Sky. They're looking around to discussing what to do, how to respond to this attack, which we knew was going to come, and they knew was going to come. And the man chasing after him there is Chris Froome, and on Chris Froome's wheel is Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Nibali is looking to gain 2 minutes and 23 seconds. He'd be settling for a couple of minutes today, I can assure you. But on the other hand, he's also looking for only 18 seconds on Chris Froome to become second overall in the Tour. And I reckon that's his immediate thought.
Horner now in difficulty as they scramble to try and stay in contact, but now you've got this group. This is Jürgen van den Broek, who's been caught out by the acceleration of Chris Froome.
And look at this, two of them left, and Froome only left to pace Wiggins.
Well, that's all he needs. He's just sitting there, he's using Froome, and the discussions about possibility of treason from Chris Froome in a race like this. Well, where's the proof? There is the proof, Phil. Chris Froome will stick to his word here in the Tour de France this afternoon, and he will pace Bradley Wiggins up this climb, and very shortly, before they get to the top, they will be on the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. First, second and third place riders in the overall standings.
There's no doubt now, though, that Chris Froome is sacrificing a Tour de France victory, as he did a Tour of Spain victory last year, for Bradley Wiggins here, but he's bringing him across the gap, and Great Britain are going to keep two men in the top two places in the Tour de France. Meanwhile, approaching the last kilometre, it's Chris Anker Sorensen in second place. The crowd is in a frenzy.
Nibali's gone again, Phil. He's got out of the saddle.
Just out of picture is Vincenzo Nibali. There he is, but the pace-making of Chris Froome bringing up the yellow jersey and his team captain, they are closing it down.
Yeah, you can see Chris Froome is just tapping out that pace as a great climber. He's taking advantage of this tailwind. Froome written down the side of his jersey there. Behind him, the yellow jersey of Bradley Wiggins. Wiggins has never really looked under any pressure at all, and having a man like Chris Froome alongside him has made him almost invincible. It's down to 5 meters now. It's almost done.
He knows they're coming back, and it is the brilliance of Chris Froome who has done it. As he's been reported as saying in the British papers, if he wants to win the Tour de France, then he must eventually leave Team Sky. But for now, he is leading Great Britain to a 1-2 in the Tour de France, and they've put the Italian back into the British sandwich.
Well, he's come to the front now, Phil, and he will continue to set the pace like this. Bradley Wiggins has got himself into the position that he wants to, onto the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. They've taken control once again. This is an amazing crowd receiving Thomas Voeckler at the top of the Col de Peyresourde.
As they hit the top of the Col de Peyresourde, Thomas Voeckler becomes the next leader in the King of the Mountains. Now, can he win the stage? Well, the result of the King of the Mountains and the Col de Peyresourde now means that Thomas Voeckler, with 5 kilometers to go, leads the King of the Mountains tonight by 4 points over Fredrik Kessiakoff and Chris Anker Sorensen in third, but a fair way back. So this could be a great move today by Thomas Voeckler. He may well, in hindsight, have won in the King of the Mountain. Look at that face. Is this man determined or not? He races for France. He's never happier than when he's in the lead.
Well, Phil, you never would have expected this in the first week of the Tour de France, when he was still recovering from that tendonitis he had in the knee, which had him pulled out of the Critérium de Dauphiné, prevented him from riding the French National Championships. He was at the back of the pack on numerous occasions. Then all of a sudden, he's in the front of this bike race, and he is enjoying himself. I know it's hurting like mad at the moment, but once he gets to that finish line in about 4.5 minutes time, he will be a very happy man.
This is Vincenzo Nibali, who's going down with the yellow jersey, and there he is, marking his man. All the hills behind him. A big day for Bradley Wiggins to tick off, and he hasn't conceded a single second of his yellow jersey. And Chris Froome has done his job. He kept his man in the hunt. Now he's being the ticket collector in the 3-man descent. On the climb itself, still going up, Cadel Evans, last year's winner of the Tour de France. He won't be taking the final yellow jersey to Paris this time around, as the clock still counts at over 11.25 minutes now. Well, the situation, as you saw by the clock there, he's going to concede over 4 minutes to Wiggins by the time he gets over the summit of the Col de Peyresourde. So it will be his teammate, TJ Van Garderen, who will be the highest placed of Team BMC. The American proving to everyone that in the long term, maybe his turn one day will be to win the Tour de France. We are not far away now. We're getting into this beautiful town here. 2 kilometers now. We are in the streets of Bagneres-de-Luchon, one of the most famous towns throughout history in the Tour de France. If he doesn't stop at the finishing line, he goes straight on. He will go into Spain up the Col de Portillon. I've got a feeling he'll stop at the finishing line today. He's seen enough of the Pyrenees.
Well, I have to say, Phil, we're going to be looking at pretty close to 5 minutes deficit for Cadel Evans, and his dream of defending his Tour de France championship from last year will go out of the window in the Pyrenees.
Yes, Evans has gone over the top there about 12:15, which is 4 minutes and 50 seconds behind the yellow jersey. I think the spirit's gone. He realised this is it, and time now no longer important. He can't recoup it. Well, Thomas Voeckler was the last stage winner, by the way, in Bagneres-de-Luchon. That was stage 15 in 2010. So he's doing exactly what Fedrigo did in Pau 2 days ago, because he was the last stage winner in Pau.
Well, in 1983, the winner down here into Luchon was the great Scottish climber Robert Miller, who won the King of the Mountain. So I wonder if that's going to be the same thing for Thomas Voeckler this afternoon. Enjoy this one, Paul. At 1 kilometre to go, Thomas Voeckler is already celebrating. He's looking over his shoulder. He may or may not know that Sorensen is chasing him, but he's not going to close a minute and a half now. Team car's gone up, shaking his hand. This is a great moment, and he's had some big moments in history in the Tour de France. This is the main street in Luchon here. This is where all the restaurants are. What a way, what a great day when you're French. Enjoy the crowd. Tomorrow he'll be in the spots of the King of the Mountains. And he was the King of the Mountains today, that's for sure. Well, the amazing thing is, Phil, you might wonder why he's just cruising up to the finish line. He's not concerned about time at all here this afternoon because he's so far down in the overall standings, not like last year when he was 4th overall, but this year he's going to take away 2 stage victories from the Tour de France.
What a race it was. He was in a breakaway of 38 riders, almost from the gun. He got rid of them all in the end. He crossed the Pyrenees on his own. It's just a perfect day. He's now the king of the mountains. He's won the stage. France have now won 5 stages of this year's Tour de France.
Well, Chris Anker Sorensen, he fought to try and get himself back into the bike race here this afternoon, but he just did not quite have the power of Thomas Voeckler this afternoon.
Great moments, and Sorensen's closed in quite considerably, as you would expect, but it was never in danger, of course, of taking the big moment away. There's the celebrations behind.
And after the celebrations behind, the riders behind, here's how they trickled in after Voeckler. Chris Anker Sorensen was first, a minute 40 behind. Gorka Izagirre and Alexander Vinokourov came in together. Brice Fayou, who hung on with Voeckler longer than anybody, was 5th, ahead of Jens Voigt. And Dan Martin, who perhaps worked too hard too early, was 7th. Behind them was the real race, the top 3 riders in the Tour, but not necessarily in that order.
And now they turn towards the finish here. They've established today one thing, that these are the 3 best riders in the 2012 Tour de France, and the 3 of them come home together. It'll be still Wiggins up front, it'll still be Chris Froome sitting 2nd, and it will still be Vincenzo Nibali in 3rd. But it looks as though Nibali is going to get something out of this. No, he's not. Yes, he is. He's going to win the sprint at least. And I don't know what position it is, about 10th or 11th. I've lost count.
Well, there's plenty of riders coming now already. This is just a question of pride for Vincenzo Nibali to lead to the line, but Wiggins just stays on his wheel and Chris Froome at the back.
He won't even give him 1 second here. Wiggins is going to finish in the same time. He's not giving him a single second. Nibali shrugs his shoulders. They're all same time.
Nibali, Wiggins, Froome was the order at the line, but it wasn't the order that mattered. It was the time difference, and there wasn't any. Next in was a group led home by Nicholas Roach, trying to ride himself up into the top 10, and containing Jurgen van den Broek and TJ van Garderen, trying to ride themselves even higher. They were just over 8 minutes behind the winner, but crucially 3 minutes 49 seconds ahead of Cadel Evans, whose handshake with George Hincapie as he crossed the line looked as much a gesture of resignation as thanks. No change in the top 3 then, but some jostling behind the podium, as it were. Jurgen van den Broek is up to 4th now, but nearly 3.5 minutes behind Vincenzo Nibali. Aymar Zubeldia is 5th, and TJ van Garderen is now 6th, above his team leader, as the defending champion Cadel Evans falls to just over 8 minutes behind Bradley Wiggins.